Hi, it's Kevin Lebates here, and a number of people have asked me questions about the Poly network hack since my last video, and so I thought I'd bundle them all up into one video and make some observations along the way as well. For those of you who haven't been following the news, it has developed further. In summary, the Poly network was hacked. You can see how in my previous video. About $600 million worth of crypto assets were stolen. Then Poly network put out a couple of angry tweets saying, "Give us our money back." The hacker posted a bunch of messages which came across as rather juvenile to me, to be honest. They were all in caps and they had a bit of a sort of taunting air to them. The hacker has since agreed to give back all the funds, and most of them are back, but about $250 million are still in an account that requires both Poly network and the hacker to sign it in order to transfer it. I don't know if that's kind of an insurance sum that the hacker is holding back in order to protect themselves until this reaches its final conclusion, but that would be my suspicion. Also, $33 million worth of Tether cannot be returned yet because they've been frozen by the company behind Tether, which I found rather interesting. I didn't know that there was a possibility to freeze Tether, and it kind of makes a mockery of it as more of a mockery of it as a cryptocurrency, because it's effectively therefore under the control of the company that issued it. So that's a thought. And oh yeah, and then as a final twist, Poly network has offered the hacker a $500,000 bug bounty. Now that one is particularly odd. It's not unusual for cryptocurrency and DeFi projects to have bug bounties, but they usually follow a number of very strict submission guidelines. And one of those requirements is that when you find a vulnerability in a contract, that you disclose it to the contract owners and don't make it public, so that they have a chance to investigate, see how severe it is, and fix it. And in return, you'll get some money, often quite substantial amounts, for your discovery and for not disclosing it. And another part of that section usually says that in return, the company will not file a lawsuit against you and they will not go to law enforcement in order to initiate an investigation. Now, it should be added here that just because the company says they're not going to investigate, that doesn't preclude the law enforcement agencies from deciding to start their own investigation. But if everybody's happy, which they would be in the case of a secret disclosure that gives the contract owners the chance to fix it, it's highly unlikely that that would happen. So I think this sets a bad precedent, that Poly network's offer of the bug bounty is not a good thing for the industry, because it sends out a message to wannabe hackers out there that they can have all the fun and notoriety of stealing the funds and have a great story to tell their grandchildren, because we do, as time goes on, eventually seem to idolize things like train robbers and successful, initially successful criminals. I don't really know why we do that, but there are plenty of movies about all sorts of old-time criminals. And anyway, what was I saying? Yes, so it sets a bad precedent, because then at the end of all the fun and games and mischievousness, the hacker can then turn around and return all the funds and then get a nice check, or rather a nice bundle of cryptocurrency as a reward for ultimately giving it back. And that's not really the way that this is supposed to work. But Poly network has kind of let the genie out of the bottle there now, and I think it's actually going to have a negative effect on the it's going to make other wannabe hackers, as I said, behave in the same way, because they can have their cake and eat it. So another thing is looking at the messages from the hacker. Obviously I don't know whether the hacker is a he or a she, or whether they are young or old, but the messages come across as quite juvenile. Now, I know when I was young, I didn't fully grasp what was and what wasn't acceptable behavior when it came to computer networks. They were new, and when you're sitting behind a terminal, you're several steps removed from what's actually going on, so it feels a bit like a game. And I think that a lot of people who are new to computing and come to it haven't had time to build up the right set of morals to understand that just because you're tapping keys into a keyboard, or rather commands into a keyboard, and making things happen on a remote server doesn't make it any less of a crime than it is to walk into somebody's house and steal things from their cupboards and drawers. So I think it seems to me that it's highly likely that the hacker is fairly young, or at least hasn't had a long time to think about what they're doing. I don't think they're an organized criminal in any kind of way. It's just a bit of fun and games, and that to me comes across as rather youthful. But of course I may be wrong. They may be 65. Who knows? And what was the final point I want to make? Oh yes, if you are a company that is launching a smart contract or a constellation of smart contracts for a DeFi project, then there is the potential for you to be in control of significant sums of money, and that means there is the potential for you to be hacked. So one of the things that you should do is have your response ready if that hack happens. Hopefully you'll never have to use that, but I think it's important that you have your negotiation plans in place, how you're going to handle it, that you have a spokesperson, and that you have basically a plan. You've thought about what would we do if we woke up one day and found that $600 million of assets that people have entrusted to us have been stolen. And I think it's pretty clear that Poly Network had not done that. The angry response, knee-jerk responses on Twitter are evidence of that. And I think it's yet another sign that these guys are not really clued up to what it is that they are doing, what they're involved in. They haven't really grasped the seriousness, or they're incredibly arrogant in that they thought that they were never going to get hacked. And you have to, as a DeFi company or a DeFi project, keep in mind that you could be the next target. So what are you going to do if something like this happens? Anyway, those are my observations on what happened here. It's almost played out, it seems, but the DeFi world is full of twists and turns, so who knows what's going to happen over the next few days or weeks or months. I guess we can just wait and see. Hope you found this interesting and informative, and I'll see you all in the next video soon. Bye for now.